right, welcome, friends. Welcome to our little program. Happy Monday! It is Steinberg on the top screen at the Sportsnet 960 downtown studios, and there's Ryan Pike on the bottom. Hello,
Hi,
Pike.
Pat. How you been doing, man? How'd you like the 8:30 game that seemed to take a million years last night?
I watched it.
Yeah,
How's that?
it was the first regular season game in National Hockey League history that took place after the playoffs had started. So it's a historical footnote. It clinched the Flames at least the 11th best or 11th worst, depending on how you want to look at draft lottery odds. It was a game. Adam Ruzicka will probably remember for the rest of his life, and the rest of us we'll file it away in terms of games that happened.
It was a game that they had to play. How's that? They were contractually obligated to play that game, and tomorrow afternoon and on Wednesday afternoon, contractually obligated. I thought there were some decent things. I mean, there's the line of Gaudreau, Lindholm, and Tkachuk is really starting to find its legs, and Ruzicka starting his NHL career was neat, and seeing Juuso Välimäki play the minutes that he did. He played almost 19 minutes. That was good to see. So I mean, it wasn't all completely boring, but it definitely is not the type of hockey people would like to be watching at this time of year. But 2 more games to go. I'm curious what the lineups are going to look like. Welcome to Flamesnation Live. It's Pike and Steinberg with you. We're brought to you by our friends at Deuce Vodka, like we are brought to you every single show here on Flamesnation Live. Who do we have in, by the way? Sam was first in. JF, Dallas, Jordan, Mike, Noah, Kyle, Ryan, Travis have all said hi on the chat so far. So plenty of people with us live, and you can always catch us after the fact on Instagram Live and archived on Facebook, or IGTV rather, and archived on Facebook. So what the heck do we want to see between now? We'll get to your chats in just a second. Get them in now. But what the heck do we want to see in these final 2 games? I know my answer. I'd like to see Matthew Phillips get a game in. I'd like to see, 20 minutes of action from guys like Mackey and Välimäki. Maybe elevate Ruzicka's role a little bit. Get him. I'd like to see very heavy youth, younger looking rosters, and then give those guys some big time minutes. That's kind of what I would like to see. I understand I'm not the coach. I understand that I don't make these decisions, but from a viewing standpoint, that's what would get me juiced up. What about you?
I don't know. I mean, similar. I think the big thing is you want to see things that sort of provide some confidence in whoever's left over here when September rolls around and we're talking about a full training camp, because everyone had no training camp, everyone had no preseason, everyone had a truncated everything with no, you can't go out for dinner on the road, you can't get your team together at home, you can't watch games. It's been a weird year for everybody, and I think the Flames have sort of worn it more than a lot of teams have, for better or for worse. But I keep harkening back to that 02-03 season where Darryl came in at Christmas time and the team was, in short, no damn good, because they completely squandered some good efforts in the first half of the season and kind of Flames. And going ahead, at least the 02-03 Flames, Darryl cracked the whip, put in some habits, fixed some things he wanted to have fixed, so that everybody was on the same page expectation wise when they met for the season in September. And like the 03-04 Flames, if you ask me, they're not even top 10 in terms of talent level for the Calgary Flames, but in terms of their ability to play a system and a style and play as a cohesive unit, probably one of the better teams in franchise history. Maybe even the best team in franchise history in terms of elevating, above their skis based on being able to play as a team. So if they can do some of that in the next 2 games and cement some things and sort of keep knocking out some bad habits, I think they'll be in a better position come September. But it's going to be a weird couple days with afternoon hockey, and then a weird couple months of an off season, and then a weird expansion draft and then a weird entry draft. And then before you know it, folks, it'll be mid-September and we'll be talking about NHL hockey again involving the Calgary Flames. But, for now, I just hope everybody has fun and doesn't get hurt.
Well, and I believe Thursday is the day that they're going to do their exit interviews and final interviews. I'm be really interested, Pike, as to what we hear from guys like Matthew Tkachuk. Matthew's probably going to be asked about signing long-term with the Flames because he's eligible to sign a contract extension this summer. Johnny Gaudreau, same thing, eligible to sign a contract extension this summer. I would imagine that both gentlemen will be asked about their desire to stay here long-term. I'm really curious where that goes. I'm curious about injuries, and I'm just curious what we get in terms of responsibility and owning how frustrating and brutal this season, disappointing this season has been. So that would be the next thing to look forward to. Would be Thursday is when everyone goes their separate ways and we hear from these guys for the final.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting because just looking down the list, I mean, what kind of changes are they going to make? Who are we seeing for the last time on Thursday? Because like there's an expansion draft, but there's also the Flames, by not retaining Sam Bennett, gave themselves a little bit of cap breathing room, not a ton, but a little bit. So how are they going to use that? And Mark Giordano and Michael Backlund have been here. The guy between them who's played the least games has played almost 700. So between the two of them, they've played, for lack of a better term, a lot of hockey for this franchise. But they've also have been part of groups that have just sort of fallen short perpetually. So what'll they have to say about it? And you just in terms of what kind of changes would they want to see made? I mean, garbage bag day, for lack of a better term, is one of the days that guys tend to be more, I'd say brutally honest than other teams. Like if Jack Eichel last week, we heard him on Buffalo's garbage bag day basically light a stick of dynamite and throw it into Buffalo's media. So what will we see in Calgary? A team that arguably had probably even as disappointing a season as Buffalo's did.
Yep, it's going to be a fascinating Thursday. Let's get to our chats. It's Pike and Steinberg with you on Flames Nation Live. Travis first in. Who on this team do you think will be part of this top six next year? Travis, I don't think we're going to be talking about a complete wholesale change. I mean, I don't even know what the top six is now. I know what your top three is. It's Lindholm, Gaudreau, and Tkachuk, and my guess is all three of those guys will be here next year. That is my guess. I don't know that for sure, but that is just my guess. I if you include Monahan as a top, I think Monahan is the guy that has the best chance of being moved. I don't think that you're going to be getting a overwhelming return for him, Pike. But if you were, I would say that depending on what you consider the top six to be, probably 5 of 6 back next year. That would be. I know that a lot of people are hoping for wholesale, full-scale changes. Just looking at it realistically, I don't know if.
Yeah, and I think we've been hearing a lot of, for example, like say the Flames being on Jack Eichel, and let's be honest, the Flames they'd be stupid if they weren't calling Buffalo and finding out what the price is. But it's a flat cap system, and for pretty much every team this summer is going to have to be dollars in, dollars out. So if you're going, man, the Flames should trade Sean Monahan for Magic Beans. Well, I mean, Sean hasn't been healthy fully in like 3 or 4 seasons because of the style of play he's made. But even with basically, his hips, back, and shoulders are basically held together by scar tissue at this point, and he still managed to score. But it's going to be difficult even moving a guy, even if you have he's been hurt credo, because you're going to have to probably take back the same kind of money going the other way. Like even with an Eichel trade, do the Flames have the ability to eat $3 million of extra cap hit? Probably not. You might have to throw something in. I mean, you and I both, we don't play favorites here, but one of my favorite players to watch of the Flames is Andre Mangiapane. He's arguably been the biggest success story of the Flames drafting and development over the last however many years. But let's be honest, to make the math work, if you're going, well, just trade Sean Monahan for Jack Eichel. Well, if I'm Buffalo, I'd probably go throw in Mangiapane. And I don't know if they'd be willing to do that. I mean, I don't know. What do you think? First, Pelche or Zary or someone of that ilk, and Mangiapane and Monahan. I mean, that would probably get it done, but I don't.
I don't know. I don't know if that gets it done for Buffalo. I'd do that all day if I'm the Flames. I don't know if it.
I think the term that's been kicked around is sort of, internally Buffalo. If I'm Buffalo's owner and I look at what they got for Ryan O'Reilly, say I want that. Give me that, and you can have Jack Eichel. And I don't know. You probably do something. Maybe you have to throw in another high pick, like another first or a second. Maybe you have to throw Pelche and Zary.
I think the only way Calgary could get a deal done for Eichel, I think Kachuk's got to be a part of it. I don't think Monahan. I don't think Gaudreau. I don't like Kachuk's a 22-year-old. I think that's the only guy that would peak Buffalo and say, okay, if you add to that, we've got a framework.
A lot of controllable years left on him. So, but
exactly.
I don't know. Like, and I talked about it in the mailbag last week, looking at what would they need to do. The thing that makes me nervous is, okay, the idea is you go out and you get Jack Eichel, and hot damn, that's a first line center. That's a capital F, capital L, first line center. Okay, what do you have to give up to get him? Because the Flames, the prospects they have, there's no cavalry coming. There's no Gaudreau or Monahan or anyone of that ilk lying in the weeds. Zary, Pelche are going to be pretty good Backlund level NHL players when they fully blossom. Like, they'll help you win. They give you really good depth. They'll be, potentially really good role players, especially Pelche because he's so versatile. But you're not going to get anybody who's going to replace potentially the pieces that you would need to send out to get Eichel. So it's like when we all discussed, what if you move Elias Lindholm full time to center? Well, that's great. That means your center position is really nice and deep, but all of a sudden your wings are super, super shallow. And I'd be worried about the same kind of thing where, like even if you somehow figure out a way to get down for Monahan, okay, so Eichel's your first line center. That's great. Monahan's gone. You probably have to lose something else too. And then your second line center is Backlund. I mean, I love Michael Backlund, but he's going to be 31, 32 next year. And at some point he's going to start tailing off a bit. Your third line center with no Sam Bennett is Derek Ryan's.
Why wouldn't Lindholm be?
Second
line.
Put him on the wing, or do you put him back at center? Like, that's the thing. Like, but even with Lindholm as your second line center, which wingers is he playing with? I mean, actually, you could do maybe Dubé or Mangiapane, but you might need to throw one of them into the trade. I don't know. It's I think we're gonna be
I don't know. I just know that Jack Eichel's better than anybody on the Flames roster. So
easily.
If you can get that guy and that's a need, why wouldn't you go get that guy is kind of but anyway, I digress. Back to the chat. Sam says, does Phillips play tomorrow? I don't know. We have no idea because they're not going to do a morning skate tomorrow. They're not going to do a morning availability. Phillips was in a white jersey at practice today, so maybe he plays tomorrow. But
and the fun / weird thing is, so for those of you who love to get into the weeds with us, so during the AHL season, there was a defined taxi squad, and it had to be between 4 and 6 players, and only the taxi squad could practice with the NHL team. But once the AHL season ends, everyone's the taxi squad. Everyone under contract is a taxi squad if they're under contract and physically in town. The players I can tell you aren't on the taxi squad right now definitively. I believe Dustin Wolf went home because he's been in a camp or a bubble since December. They want him to sort of be back and see his family because he hasn't been able to do that in the better part of the year. And, he's done his work this year. I believe Connor Zary is I believe he's dealing with an upper body injury. I think it's a concussion, but I don't know that definitively. Concussion is what the folks in Kamloops suspected, the media folks who I talked to, because he got hit in the head with an elbow and then missed 6 games. So they're not going to rush him. They're not going to be they're being careful with him. Pelche's playing still, and that's it. Everybody else is basically potentially on the taxi squad, and we don't really know definitively how many guys are on the trip. A bunch of them are. They brought many people on the trip. Daryl made the joke that there's 55 seats on the plane, and they were gonna try to fill most of them. So they have a lot of dudes with them, but we don't know how many dudes or which dudes. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yes. So we'll see if Phillips plays tomorrow, Sam. Kyle asks, where do you think the Flames will draft in 2021? So what do we know? So first of all, lottery aside, highest they could pick is 11, correct?
They're
and that means they've got, as of right now, they would have the 11th best lottery odds.
They are 10th from the bottom, and then you have to slot in Seattle at third, which slides everybody down one. So right now they're 11th. If they win one more game, they will pass both Arizona and Chicago and finish with the 13th best odds. Arizona's pick in the first round is forfeit as a result of that the weird testing scandal they had under former GM John Chayka. So the thing is that they're not taking away Arizona's odds. They're just going to redraw if they manage to land in that. So, my understanding is, unfortunately, we don't have a physical draft this year because the plan was if there was a physical draft that whenever Arizona's first round pick would come up, everyone would just sort of stop awkwardly and stare at the table until the horn went off 30 seconds later and then go on to Chicago's pick. This year, they're just going to skip over them entirely. But, if the Flames jump past them, they're going to have their odds diminished by 1 or 2%, which, it doesn't sound like a lot, but 1 or 2% in something like this with only 2 draws, it could be interesting. So that's a long way of saying, I assume they're going to probably split these next 2 games, maybe win both of them. They'll probably draft 13th.
And what's the highest they could pick if they were to win the lottery?
1 or 2.
Okay. So the lottery changes don't start until next year's draft.
I believe so. Yeah. So they could draft first, second, 13th, or in the event that one of the 3 or 4 teams behind them wins the lottery, they could drop down 1 or 2 spots. They'll probably, if they win one more game, they probably just draft 13th.
Right. Okay. From Jordan, do you think Sutter not playing the youth is him showing his hand as to what he thinks about the team's prospects? I know this. I know everything Daryl Sutter does is calculated. He's always thinking 2 and 3 steps ahead. I also know that since arriving here in March, he has been very critical of the way this organization has gone about their business over the last number of years. So whether it be conditioning, whether it be not having enough elite players, not being prepared enough, there's been a lot of things that Daryl has criticized about the way this organization had been run prior to him coming back to the team. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know that for a fact, but could be true. Like, that could absolutely be why we have not seen a lot of these guys, A, get in, and B, when they have gotten in, play.
Yeah, and I think a certain amount of that is just sort of expectations management, too, because, Daryl's like you said, everything Daryl does is calculated and vetted internally, and I think a lot of it is just, especially when they were, still technically in it, they didn't want some poor kid being framed as this kid is here to save the Calgary Flames. Conversely, they also didn't want some poor kid being brought in as a one game wonder and then screw up and cause them to miss the playoffs. So, in a lot of ways, they didn't want kids to wear expectations, positive or negatively, that would be sort of, hanging over their heads. But, let's be honest. I mean, outside of like Shillington, I love Shillington. Maybe he's a sixth or seventh guy. I mean, in a lot of ways, Mackey's outplayed him in the games he's been in. But you want Sutter is a guy who's used, looking even dating back to his time in LA, he uses the young guys that are there. The Kings, when he came in, had a bunch of some young guys who were knocking on the door ready. Here, he doesn't know them as well, and he hasn't had a chance to really analyze them, probably to the degree to which that he feel comfortable throwing them into key situations. So, he sort of give them baby steps for now.
I like this one because we don't know the answer. Question is, who is Markstrom's backup next season? And I think that is a fascinating conversation. I don't think it's going to be Louis Domingue, and that's about all I can tell you. I'm guessing it's not Zagadulin either. Maybe we see Zagadulin get into a game here. I hope so. But otherwise, I think they're going out and they're probably signing someone to be the backup. And if you're them, you're hoping you can probably get that guy for less than $2 million because that'll help you on your cap. So I don't know. Somebody suggested Casey DeSmith in Pittsburgh. He's a pending unrestricted free agent. I think it's going to be someone that you're going to have to find on the free agent market.
Yeah, or like they have extra picks, so maybe depending on how things go, like it's the group they went out and they've been a lot of it sort of depends on what happens in the offseason, what kind of asset they have access to. But Treliving went out and threw some late picks towards Carolina to get Eddie Lack out of there. But I'm pretty sure like it won't be Wolf, it won't be Domingue, it won't be Zagadulin based on how the three of them have been used. Wolf, they would like to probably get a full year in Stockton to just learn the game and run their show. They're not going to rush him. I would assume Tyler Parsons, based on playing one game in professional hockey this year, won't be the backup next year either. So yeah, the list right now of what we know, we basically know who it won't be. It won't be David Riddick. They can't afford David Riddick unless David Riddick is willing to take a massive financial haircut. And I don't know why he'd do that. But yeah, there's the weird thing is there's not a ton out there, the free agent market, that really makes me fist pump and go, they got to go get that guy. So maybe they, that's why I'm sort of leaning towards throw a fourth somewhere, just try to get somebody's, backup goalie or second or third goalie there. Like, there's going to be some teams who have some expansion draft issues, some teams with some challenges. I think there's going to be a lot of chaos. Heck, for all we know, the Flames might make a deal with Seattle and make a trade and steal Seattle's third goalie, because let's be honest, Seattle is going to, from what I remember, they're going to have to share a farm team next year because Palm Springs won't start for a bit. But they're still going to need to put guys through waivers. So if you're Seattle, you could either pick up some of the expansion draft and risk losing them on waivers, or send them to Calgary for a fourth. I mean, that might be a way they get around some things. But there's a lot of moving pieces, and right now all we know is what we don't know.
Final chat topic is it's come from a number of people just kind of talking about the draft. We were talking about where the Flames are likely to pick. So let's just say that they are going to pick at 13. Let's say that where it ends up being. Like you're the draft guy. I've started diving into the draft and learning more about it. But you're of the two of us, you're the draft expert. So like, what's a reasonable target at 13 overall? There is like Dylan Guenther's not going to fall to 13, I don't think. I know a lot of people are hoping that he would be a Flames target. Like what type of player are we talking about at 13? Who's kind of in that mix from the research?
Well, Pat, you know me. I love sweet spreadsheets. So I've consolidated at the site. One of the things that I do is just sort of keep an eye on what's going on in the draft world, because unfortunately I haven't made a lot of junior games this year, and I haven't watched as much junior hockey as I normally would. There's a lot of players out there who could go. Right now, consolidating 11 current rankings. 13th overall would be possibly Mason McTavish. He plays in the OHL most years. This year he played in Europe because the OHL didn't play. Another guy who will be available around there is Fabian Lyselle, who's a Swedish winger. He's very Flamesy in that he's sort of cut from that Backlund Lindholm sort of two-way toolsy center mode, or two-way winger mode rather. If they want to go for to the dub, Carson Lambos unfortunately had his season cut short with Winnipeg due to injury, but he's a really good, smooth skating, just toolsy defenseman. I know Peter Labardius has raved to me about Carson Lambos at various times. If they want to go a bit off the board, Corson Coolmans plays in the AJHL. He's a big dude who could be a really nice cornerstone defenseman. Aatu Ratti is a guy. He's kind of, I'd say he's this year's Shellington in that, like a year and a half ago, people saw Aatu Ratti as potentially the tippity top guy of this year's draft. And there's some guys who absolutely, some scouts love Ratti and think he's, the best things in sliced bread. He's Finnish, he's smart, he's fast. He doesn't do all the things all the time. And so some scouts don't really love him. So he's a guy who, depending on your draft list, you could see going really early in the first round. There's going very late in the first round, or potentially slipping into the second. So the challenge is once you get beyond, say, I don't know, 9th or 10th, the consensus completely falls apart, and then it's just sort of chaos. There's some guys who are top 10 on everyone's list. There's some guys who are top 10 on nobody's list, and But I've been talking to scouts pretty much since September, and the term has been it's really a lot like 2012, where the upper depth is kind of all over the place. There's some good players who will fall to the top 10, but once you get beyond 10, 11, 12, it could be a complete gong show. So I don't know. It's also one of those years that if you're like the Flames last year, the Flames thought they really had their homework done last year, really liked their draft list, and they were able to trade down twice, get the guy they wanted in Carl Lyselle, and get 2 extra picks out of it. This is the kind of year that if you do your homework and really feel confident in your list and think your guys know their stuff, you could trade down a couple, get 1 or 2 guys that you really like, and end up getting 2 or 3 extra picks out of it. So, it's going to be chaos, man. It's you and I. You and I have covered 2 drafts together in person, at least. They're fun as hell because there's so much. Like, the chaos is part of the fun of the draft, and the cool thing is in that week we get 2 chaotic drafts, and then potentially a very weird free agency day that instead of being on Jarome Iginla's birthday is on July 28th.
Well, that's a little ways away still. We're still 2 months away from the draft and such, but I know people are excited for it, and understandably so because of the way this season has gone for the Flames. Hey, this is Flamesnation Live. We've been brought to you all day by Deuce Vodka. In fact, we've been brought to you most of the season by our friends at Deuce Vodka. Check them out wherever fine spirits are sold, and if your local liquor store does not carry Deuce Vodka, make sure they do, and make sure they bring it in. Goodbye, Pike. He's Ryan Pike. I'm Pat Steinberg. Check us out on the socials. You can follow us on Instagram and on Twitter, so on and so forth, and lots of postseason coverage at flamesnation.ca. By postseason, I mean for Calgary standpoint.
Off-season.
After the season. Yes, not postseason the way we'd like. Bye, Pike. Be well. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Stay safe. Get your vaccine. Be kind to one another. We'll talk to you later this week on Flames Nation Live.